And we are live. Welcome back to For Whom the Bell Tolls. And tonight, the bell is tolling for the host of Shelf Centered on BookTube, the one and only Bryce. So if you are watching tonight live with us and want to welcome you, feel free to participate in the chat. We're going to be monitoring the chat. We'll try to highlight as much as we can. For those of you that are watching on replay, love to get your comments as well. We're glad to have you on replay. But let me first welcome the host of Shelf Centered, one of my inspirations for doing BookTube. How are you doing tonight, Bryce?
I'm doing well, a little stressed, but just life in general, but I appreciate it. I'm just so happy to be on here. I've been loving your channel from day one. And I think, what did we first connect over? Was it that readathon?
It was where
Yeah.
we mercilessly defeated your team. I mean, it was no, I'm kidding, everybody. So we were in the Keymark Discord readathon back in, was it July?
Yeah.
And Bryce was a team captain, and
Terrible team captain.
Bryce was a fairly mediocre team captain from the Inside Scoop. There'll be more on that on the Patreon. Anyway, so Bryce was a team captain, and I was on Christopher Navo's team, and it was an interesting readathon because if certain people didn't participate, they could call in what they would call their ringers, which I guess is great for our title, For Whom the Bell Tolls. And I was a ringer and ended up reading like 10 or 11 books in a month for the readathon. But I think that's probably where my first interaction was with you.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, just on those live streams and stuff. Anyway, yeah, so I just feel like it was easy friendship, right? From like almost immediately, and absolutely just love the energy you bring to your channel and everything, and obviously the books themselves. But yeah, I just love fantasy, science fiction, horror. I actually blogged back in the day when I was in law school.
Yep. We're going to talk about that tonight too.
Yeah. So I did a little bit of that. I've been, but then, life happened, got a real job and, and worked at that. Then I discovered this magical thing called BookTube.
Sure.
And it was probably, I think it was like Daniel Green is like, the gateway drug. And then it was Mike, and then Mike like leads you to Philip Chase, and
sure, he's in the chat.
You just keep going from there, and you're just like, oh, I'm an addict, I guess. And eventually,
it is interesting that we can become BookTube addicts in a sense, because if you have any ambitions out there of ever starting a channel, you're probably, watching a lot of different booktubers, and your YouTube feed is basically full of booktube all the time. So I love it when the shelf-centered posts come up, because I know I'm in for something interesting. I'm going to say hi to the people that are typing to us in the chat real quick, and then I've got some questions. We're going to do some deep digging on Shelf-Centered and Bryce. We're going to find out what makes him tick tonight, you guys. Step out all the way from Croatia. I don't know what time it is there, but welcome in. And that's you. And we got Britton's here. That's good. Hey, Britton. And our guy, Darko. We love Darko. Happy hump day to you. And here is D. That's right. It is tomorrow in the UK. Well, welcome in. Welcome in. And we've got Shad. Very cool. It's also tomorrow in Croatia, we're hearing. Hang on a second. Brian, here's Matt's Fantasy Book Reviews. Brian, do you loosen up the tie after work for these videos or throw on the sloppy tie just for the video? My brain says A, but my heart says B. This is a great question. What an amazing, I love this guy's channel, by the way. If you're not already subscribed to Matt's Fantasy Book Reviews, what are you even doing? You got to go over there. Matt, I'm going to answer your question. I work for myself. I don't wear a tie during the day. So For Whom the Bell Tolls gets my utmost, schlocky look possible, kind of the grizzled detective pre-grizzled look, if that makes sense. If I could grow out a 5 o'clock shadow just for this stream, I would absolutely be doing it. You never know. A trench coat might come out one of these nights as well, along with this getup. So that could absolutely happen.
I literally bought a doctor's whatever coat just for a stupid video.
Well, I'm all about the costumes here, and
I like that. I need to do more.
And thank you, Dr. Chase. Philip is an amazing guy. He's going to be on. The bell is tolling for Dr. Philip Chase in 2 weeks. So you guys are not going to miss that. Anyway, I don't even remember. Oh, we were talking about costumes. Just because I had the bar for so long, we were very known for our Halloween events.
Oh,
And
wow.
so I never really wanted to wear the same Halloween costume twice, which made me have dozens of Halloween costumes built up over the years. You know, we're only in season 1 here, folks. We got a lot to look forward to
Yeah.
if you like me in some crazy get-ups. But tonight's not about me. Tonight's gonna be about Bryce. And I have some questions. You are hugely well-read. I have enjoyed so many of your videos, and I noticed you did a video of basically ranking your top 100 fantasy books. And that tells me that you're well-read, clearly. And you've mentioned earlier that you started as a blogger, right?
Yeah.
What was it before we even get to that? Is there like a book that ignited your love for fantasy that just created that spark? What was that book that you picked up that goes, I love this genre?
The funny part is it was like multiple, right? It almost had to happen like multiple times throughout my life, right? So to give you a really good lawyer answer for it,
and don't worry, folks, we're going to cover his profession very adequately tonight. Because, hey, by the way, before you answer this question, Bryce is an attorney by trade. I'm not on the billing clock right now, am I?
Oh, should I stop that?
You should absolutely stop the billing clock. Folks, you heard it here first. If BookTuber gets an invoice from Bryce, you know that I said take the billing clock off. All right. It's on the internet, so that means that for sure won't last forever, right? Things disappear in the internet like in 30 seconds after you say them, and they never, ever come back to haunt you, ever.
It doesn't happen. No, the internet does not remember.
If you're running for office from now, 20 years from now, Bryce, I promise this video won't be held in an archive. Okay. I interrupted you. Tell me about a book that ignited your passion. You said it was kind of a few different ones over the years.
It's definitely a few different. Like if you really go way back to I remember elementary school loving the Chronicles of Narnia, right?
Okay.
I fell for that. I read through the whole series. But there's always these breaks in my life where I don't know, I just went, got back out of it. It wasn't until high school that I watched the first Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring. And then it was oh my gosh, that was amazing. And then, so I had to read it. I was like, I can get an ending right now. So why wait a couple of years? I'm going to get an ending. And I remember, again, that was hadn't really been a reader for years other than school. And then I remember it was a spring break and I just tore through. Yeah, exactly right.
We do. And Bryce and I were talking backstage, just that fantasy readers in general tend to be kind of nicer people. I've noticed that over the years, but yeah, that's true.
I mean, there's a lot of I keep hearing things like men don't read, or some silly
go tell that to Ernest Hemingway, right?
Yeah,
before he punches your lights out, right?
Or you're only reading if it's nonfiction, and it's actually we get a lot of empathy, and it's amazing how much that helps you in your life.
You brought up an interesting point, and I never really thought about that. Because I'm a little bit older than you and I was very familiar with Lord of the Rings prior to the movies coming out, that must have happened far more than I realized, because that thought had not ever occurred to me that movie 1 came out and people would go pick up book 2 and book 3.
Oh yeah.
Like you said, to find out where the story is going. How cool.
Yeah. I blazed through them, and I just remember being oh, it was a different feeling. I didn't know that you could be immersed in a world and just be that in love with a place, with characters, with things. And I guess maybe I'd forgotten, but it just brought everything back. But again, I had another break and didn't really do much. And it wasn't until it was a college roommate was a huge fantasy reader. So I was in luck. He's one of my best friends still to this day. We're actually going to the Salt Lake, Van X.
Okay.
Excuse me. Later this year together. So if anyone's going, let's go. But it was,
there's plenty of people in Utah. I know Durfee's out in Utah. I think, there's a couple of people that are on BookTube out there.
Yeah. and that's why I'm in Colorado, so it was like that's kind of the closest kind of
Right.
big thing. But anyway, so like that, yeah. So this friend, he gave me he gave me a bunch. He gave me like Weiss and Hickman, what is it? The Deathgate Cycle. I actually still haven't even read that, but he gave me it was Melanie Ron's Dragon Prince. And like
Okay.
again, I like read through this trilogy that just like blew my mind. And so Melanie Ron did it for me. That was like the most recent, and I really didn't stop from there. That was when I really just was like,
It's
I gotta start.
it's almost like the universe is telling you, Bryce,
Yeah.
you need to read fantasy and you need to tell other people about the fantasy. And
I
I will
can't
keep
help
sending you these messages.
it. Right. And I
I
did finish all the Witcher books just barely like days ago. And
Awesome.
the last one was the roughest, but it's a really good series and definitely worth it.
Very, very cool. I want to say hi to Joanna and Tyson and Heidi who've just joined us. Welcome on into the show. That's interesting stuff. So you started blogging.
Yeah.
What made you decide you want to start blogging about this stuff? Because it
It's
never occurred to me to ever like write down anything.
right. So I feel like I'm always like, I don't know, 10 steps behind the like popular thing or something. So,
That's
in the same sense of starting BookTube or whatever, it was the same kind of thing. I started following blogs and I was like addicted to just, it was in the same, I didn't even like contemplate that you could talk on a video about books. Like
right.
that didn't make any sense to me. But YouTube, well, I don't even know. I'm like going to date myself totally, but when
Look,
did it
you're
really
on
get
my
popular?
channel. You're
Yeah.
on my channel, right? I mean, there's like a sarcophagus over there where I sleep at night. All right. So you're never gonna date yourself on BellTube.
That's good.
Philip might try, but we'll see. I think I still got him by a year or two, maybe.
Yeah, I've been working on my gray hairs
There you
here.
go. Well, before I started the channel, I had a beard for years, and it's very, very, very grayish. So yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I don't even know what I was talking about at this point, but
Well,
yeah.
we were talking about blogs and
Oh yeah. So yeah, I doing the blog was just, again, it was hey, maybe I could get into this. So I just started my own, and then I got kind of pulled into another blog to kind of, do one of those more like multiple people type blogs, but it ended up being just me after a while. And that was called Only the Best Sci-Fi Fantasy. It's still up to this day, and I tried to, when I really started out with YouTube, I started posting some of my really janky videos on it. So
why not?
yeah, that's what I was like, I'm gonna try it everywhere, and it just like didn't seem to help anyway. So, but it was just something like, hey, I still had it going. I love it, and it was just one of those, like, I love talking books, and not always do you have a best friend around you that can like talk books, unless you're like Two to Ramble, who like that's so awesome what they got going.
I have found that there's a synergy of energy when you see some of these programs that have a couple of people, and even John Minton, what he's doing now with his son Jacob with Talking Story, where
Yeah.
even though he's off camera, there's some banter going on. It's really increased the energy level of what they do. I love it. I mean, I think anytime you've got that kind of banter back and forth, definitely creates a little bit of excitement. And Philip is saying we're going to talk about the 70s when he's on the show. Rest assured, I haven't listened to a song that it's come out post 1982. I don't think ever.
I literally was in the car taking my kids to school the other day, and I was like, wait a sec, I don't think they know the music I listened to predominantly was not the music of my generation.
Right.
Much older.
It's so you had mentioned your law practice, and I do try to prepare for these shows, even though I feel like a lot of the videos that come up on my channel are, oh, yep, he's got our product. That's our Bell Flash product that we make here. Thank you for showing that, by the way. I try to prepare a little bit, and so some of the questions that I have for you tonight sort of combine what you do not verses, but with your passion for reading and specifically in this genre. But before we get into more of those specifics, let's talk about what's it like to juggle. I think you have a pretty large family, right?
Yep. 4 kids.
You've got 4 kids. You are a practicing attorney.
Yeah.
you read, and you read enough to produce Shelf Centered on BookTube. What's a day in the life like for you? Is there a day in the life, or do you have it sort of scheduled out because you've been doing this for a little bit? It's not your first rodeo, that it makes sense in your world, so you're not just haphazardly all over the place. Walk us through it.
There's a healthy amount of being haphazard, but it is like you have to get it planned, and you have to kind of, I think we were talking about before we got on live, but it was just like you got to take advantage of where you can and what you can. I mean, one of my most recent videos, I was like off on a business trip in a crappy hotel, and I was like, I'm gonna make a top 10 inns and taverns. Like,
I love that video, especially because it looked like, the art was about to fall off the wall in that thing. I was looking around
I should be in charge of that.
I swear to God,
oh,
you guys,
cheap. I'll do that.
you got to go over to Shelf Center and watch this thing. He did a top 10 best inns, and he did it from a crappy motel. And I kid you not, I was looking around to see if somewhere on the nightstand was one of those old things you'd slip a quarter into,
Right.
and the bed would start shaking.
So true. And the best, I got up, I had some issues with my first room. It wasn't like, it was just trashed.
Yeah.
Like, so I had to go back up to the like head office multiple times. I was like, oh my gosh, I thought it was in a good area. It was like in this, anyway, like there's this, like, she said she was 61 years old, and she goes, "You married?" I'm like, "Yep." She's like, "Oh, well."
Yeah. But I know my friend Brian in Minneapolis. Is that what you were going to say?
Yeah, exactly. She goes, "Well, tell your wife she's a lucky lady because you're hot."
There you go. This is after the third or the fourth pack of cigarettes during the day.
At least the third or fourth.
At least the third pack. All right. Heidi wants to know, and Heidi, I'm going to answer your question about the Witcher books on my TBR video that I'm filming tomorrow. That'll come out on Friday. Bryce, what type of law Heidi practiced in another lifetime?
Oh, hey, no way. Yeah, I am mostly family law. So I kind of have a split practice. It's like mostly family law, and then estate planning when I can get it. If I could just do that, it'd be great because it's a lot less stressful.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I'm in court a lot.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I went to business school, and for part of my business training, you had to take, I think, contract law was one of the classes that you had to take, and an attorney taught the class, and he basically said, unless you love daily conflict, we do not recommend law as a profession to anybody. And I thought that was interesting. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, and people will often tell me like, look, you're a lawyer. Like I'm not. I'm generally pretty happy, pretty non-confrontational.
Right.
But it's kind of one of those things, both because I was a reader and I was like, I like reading. Let's go make me hate it.
Exactly. Right.
So that was actually one of the reasons I went to law school even, but
awesome.
Yeah.
You are like, I swear to God, you guys, I did not prep him with these questions that I have for him tonight, but he's walking into this trap like nobody's business. I love it.
This is what I do for a living. I got to tell you that,
this is great. Let me ask you this. So a lot of the times in fantasy and science fiction as well, I don't want to leave that out because I know we have a lot of viewers that prefer sci-fi. I tend to read more in fantasy, but when it comes to my preference, I'm kind of 50-50. There'll be times that I'm so happy I'm reading a fantasy book, but can't wait to get to the next sci-fi book. So in both sci-fi and in fantasy, a lot of the times these books explore themes of like justice and redemption. How do you think your legal expertise and your experience enhances your interpretation of those kinds of themes?
Oh man. No, that's good. And I do, because that's the thing is, I mean, and part of you go, I don't think, well, I'd say most people, not all definitely, but a lot of people go, I'll stick with a lot of people go to law school because you are trying to like help. You want to help. I don't know how many people like neighbors have been at my home, when I get home after work, like, hey, they got an issue. They need to talk to you for a sec. Because people are in bad positions, right? Bad states. So we do, and it's those deep concepts that you're constantly thinking about. And that's what I love about science fiction and fantasy is it lets you really go to the extreme on a deep concept. You know, there's a, I don't want to spoil, but like where you can like really just change a whole generation of people in a fantasy book just based on like a godlike character or something like that. And you know, and just stuff like that where you can really deal with some like almost extremes though of like a philosophical problem. And that's what I love about it is just thinking about those big deep thoughts. I do think, I mean, and fantasy has it too. Maybe sci-fi is like more more
Yeah.
of that. But I do think like in the example that I gave is actually from a fantasy series, and I don't want to spoil it, but is actually literally from a fantasy series that makes you again think of those larger, bigger things. Absolutely. Injustice. I mean, I'm reading through The Age of Madness right now. I'm about midway through the second book, Joe Abercrombie.
Excellent. Yeah, I love that series.
It's so good. And it is just like, and it's like this industrial age. And so, you know, I've read The Jungle by Upton Sinclair. Like that was, I mean, so this is a little different because it's like feudal industrial age as opposed to
Hmm.
like capitalist industrial age, but still a lot of similarities. And nobody's caring about the poorest, that's for sure. And what's another life lost, you know, by the when you're making money, which is just you know, and it just, it's like, I don't know, it just helps you like get your moral center, right? Like it gets you centered morally, like, oh yeah, I when I encounter, because I think a lot of things I just feel like, and I try to impart to my like kids, is that you've got to make your decisions now, because out in public, out in the world, you like that's when you either need to stand up or not, right? Like that's where you need to be prepared to and know yourself and be ready for that. Sorry to get, I don't know, on a grandstand or whatever.
No, I think that
Uh,
that actually leads us into kind of what I was going to follow up with, because, you know, because you practice family law versus something like criminal law, where you are really into the justice system. I almost said the Justice League. See, Philip would know about the Justice League. Meanwhile, back at the Hall of Justice. Anyway, justice and redemption may lean a little bit more into the criminal side of law, but
Definitely.
certainly fantasy books provide some very complex moral and ethical dilemmas in many instances. And in virtually every deep book, you know, that's at least not just completely shallow, there are some moral and ethical dilemmas that are faced. Do you feel like your experience as an attorney that does family law enables you to maybe see different angles of it than an average reader would? Because a lot of us would just call it grimdark, right? Oh, everyone's morally gray, and you know, there's no good and there's no bad and
Right.
whatever. But I just wondered, through the lens of a practicing family attorney, when you
Right.
see moral and ethical dilemmas that are not very obvious, right? You know, it's how do you read that? Do you think different than somebody that doesn't have your background and doesn't do what you do every day?
Oh man, that's a loaded question there. Because I always go into things going like, I probably know the least about this, especially, and I was gonna say, is it Stepan? Is that how you pronounce it? I was like, great, good. You happen to just be, you know, asking that question right at the right time.
Yeah.
Um, but I, oh man, to really, because that's what you know, I always approach things of like in a way of like, I expect other people, like I'm not an English major, right? Like I'm not, you know, I didn't study these things. In fact, I skated as much as you could skate by in my English classes. You know, and they were usually my worst actually, which is funny enough. Like I was better at math and science
Interesting.
and stuff like that. So, but so I go in like not necessarily thinking that like I know better, that I do better, but I think especially to address Stepan's question there, I the things that I've seen in what I do. So part of my like half of my practice is family law. The other half really is I'm a guardian ad litem, and so you represent the children that get taken and pulled into the foster system, right? Like it's not light stuff that you are like, you know, dealing with. Like the other day I got a case and I was like, hallelujah, I finally got a case where it's just meth. Like
Wow.
like
I mean, like, but
that will
I
tell you.
I understand that on a little bit of a different deal, because in the bar business, I would walk outside in the patio and look around and hear gunfire going off in the background and not even think twice after a while about it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And so my like what I consider a good person, it's a pretty low level. Like it's a I have
The
a
bar is
very
low.
forgiving, yeah, the bar is very low. That's the better way to put it. Um and I just know, and I've seen just things like people come out of things or just make a right choice even though they just like, and just the understanding of just like what addiction will do to people, or like I have so much empathy for people, and I think my readings help me understand and help people, but also uh, I don't know, I feel like it does definitely, and I look into like, you know, more of the details maybe of things, but I read for fun, right? Like my reading
Right.
time is for me to just be like, okay, take brain, put it away for the night. Then I can actually sleep at night and
Right.
go into some fantasy land where I can just go know that none of the stuff actually is happening. All the horrors I have to deal with back at work, but I'll just go into here and then I can actually sleep at night. And
That
so
and
it is, I do kind of part them, like separate them in a way that I don't know if I really like look at it as a lawyer anymore.
I think that's probably very healthy for you to do. It was actually
I
one of
have
my
to.
questions. I mean, you are, like I said, you're walking right into this. I love it. By the way, hi Ryan and hi Beard of Darkness. Matt's the greatest, and I think somebody else just popped in that I wanted to make sure that I shouted out. I don't know. Anyways, um, so but that was another question, is this, how do you separate all this reading that you do for work, which is probably pretty substantial, versus, you know, I think you'd find a lot of people, in other words, that would not pick reading as their primary hobby if they're an attorney.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, literally, it kills most people's reading like almost immediately when you become a lawyer. I rarely find other lawyers that are avid readers anymore because it does kill it a lot of times. But I don't know, it's been something that I just love so much that I got to make time for it, and I don't know, just it's it's such like it is the stuff that I read on a daily basis. It does, like, you get like a lot of reports are the same reports over and over again. So
Sure.
a lot of the horrors that you read about are like you kind of just try to again compartmentalize things so you can survive a little bit. But you know, for the most part, I do try to just separate them as much as possible. You know, it is a lot different reading. You know, I can tell you that much. And you know, especially researching for like some case law or something that I've got to
Right.
find. Like that's completely like, that's just reading through a ton of stuff as fast as you humanly possibly can to find the thing that'll get you what you want.
So, I mean, one of them is clearly more obviously professional, studying it to a professional level. The other is your escape, but at the same time, you read some pretty complicated material. I saw that. I think Matt
Did you see
is.
Matt's comment there?
Yeah, I saw Matt's comment about Malazan. I hope if you guys didn't see my short the other day, definitely go watch my short, because it talked about how we pronounce Malazan here on the channel. Um, anyway, but you read some pretty complex stuff, and some of these fantasy worlds have some pretty complicated legal systems. I
Oh,
mean, they build in, you know, whatever the laws of the land are, and so many of the times we find our characters that are in violation of those laws, or they're skirting those laws, or they're getting out of jail because they broke those
yeah.
laws. So I think when I like I said, when I was preparing for this tonight, it really fascinated me, going, I don't really know any other attorneys. My brother-in-law is about as close as I get. He took
And
the
Heidi,
bar,
we just saw.
and Heidi, and he took the bar, but he's so busy he can hardly read. But I don't know a whole lot of practicing attorneys
Yeah.
that will do it. But I love how you're able to separate out the professional kind of duty day-to-day stuff versus what you've chosen to be your enjoyment. But I have to wonder, when you're reading and you get some of these big legal systems, you know, that are in these books, does your mind go into it a little bit?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, well, so there's like Daniel Abraham. I feel like he does a really good job on those kinds of things. But like economics is actually my undergrad too, so he does both of those quite well. But I do have to sometimes do a little bit of like, look, I have to, convince myself, if you might say, and go, you know what? It's this fantasy world's version of the law. Maybe it might not make sense given what the actual laws are here in the U.S. where I practice. And this fantasy land, it can work that way. But I will tell you, I mean, like 90% of clients come in expecting suits, and you're like, well, I mean, we've got a preponderance of the evidence as our standard. I just, I mean, all they have to do is be a little more believable on the stand than you. So we better prepare for that, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. When you are trying to think of the way that I want to word this, kind of when you do all of these things that you do, it is juggling to some degree, right?
Yeah.
Because you're working, you've got your family, you've got your channel, you're also reading as a hobby, plus anything else you decide to do in the 1 or 2 minutes left over at the end of the day. Can you think of a moment that's challenged you to do all of those things, and maybe kind of share with the people that are watching live and the people that are on replay what you did to overcome it? Because yeah, on the channel, I'm always talking about how people can develop, more fully as human beings. So being as how you've taken on so much, what's something that's challenged you that you found a way to kind of work through or work around or just made it work?
Oh man, this week's definitely been one of those. Actually, funny you say that. I'm moving offices. I'm, going out on my own, hanging my own shingle, as they say, and trying to balance and totally failing on, you know, I like had to make a community tab announcement like, hey, sorry, did even the time that I had this weekend to even film, I was doing live streams, and so it was like. I'm sorry. It was literally my I was at my like the end. So I think part of it is just acknowledging where your limits are, but also like I think just doing is in just doing like if you have to do a thing, it's better to do it than to live with the fear of it, right? Like
Yes.
I quote that all the time. Hey,
Hey, Aaron.
and so there's a lot of just like doing and then seeing how it works out instead of being like, oh, I'll never be able to do it. Like, just that's what I've learned in life. Like I've started my own company and it does okay and it supports my family. And now I'm going out on my own and I'm really scared about that, but it's doable and we're just gonna make it happen. And
If I
um,
was if I was you, I would find a booktuber that's into fantasy books that knows something about
I
entrepreneurism
know if only I could find one.
and running your own business and being solely responsible for whether you eat a TV dinner for the rest of your life or if you can ever go out somewhere decent. Um, you should find somebody like that. You
It'd
can
be a
talk,
great idea if only.
you can talk, a little self-help on the tough business days, because what I'd like to share with everybody here is what Bryce is doing is no small feat. And it's kind of like what we talked about with Tori last week, being an author, where it's not just about writing the book. You got to go out and sell the book. For Bryce, it's not just about practicing law and being the best attorney ever. If he is, and I'm sure he's fantastic, he still has to let other people know that he exists,
Yeah.
right? People need to know this is who you call when you need this type of work done. And that is an entirely different skill set than going to law school. There are no questions, as far as I'm aware of, on the bar exam that talks about how are you going to make sure to keep the lights on when the client is 90 days behind in invoice billing
Oh
and
man.
payment, and what are you going to do when the tax man comes around and you're still
How do you
waiting
make
on
sure
accounts payable?
payroll is set up so that your one employee that you want to make happy and not have to get screwed over because you made decisions doesn't get paid somehow? So you're anyway. That's what I.
Well, right. And that's one of the things that I'm really passionate about here at BellTube, is because no matter what, regardless of whatever walk of life you're in, to some degree, learning how to present yourself and sell yourself. And I mean selling in kind of like a positive method, not, you're getting something of low value for a high price, but being of real value. There are skills that you absolutely need to learn. And since you've been doing this for a long time, yes, I did, Britton. I did notice this flask. Um, but since you've been doing this for a long time, I feel a lot more confident. And I'm sure to some degree you feel more confident hanging your own shingle outside, because it's not your first rodeo.
Right.
But
And one of the worst parts is it's like you want to do the thing that you came to do, which is for me the law, but it's like, but the admin stuff still needs to be done because you have to get paid to actually keep the lights on. So you got to do it, even though you hate that part of it.
Well, and that's right. And I've noticed, and this isn't something that I mentioned, with Tori last week, which, by the way, I want to let everybody know before I forget. Tonight we are keeping this really tight because Bryce is on a tight schedule. We're gonna go another 25 minutes and then we're gonna wrap it up. But here's the good news: at 8 p.m. Central Time tonight, so that's 9 p.m. Eastern, and that is 7 p.m. Mount Doom time or whatever time zone Bryce is on. And 6 o'clock Pacific time, Tori has Fonda Leon tonight on a live stream interviewing the author of the Greenbone Saga. I want to make sure I will be in the chat for sure. So if you guys want to hear from Fonda Lee tonight, she's over on Tori's channel in about an hour and a half. If you're watching this on replay, well, it's on replay by now too. Yeah. Very cool. So I think, like you said, living in the moment is kind of important. When you look at your BookTube career so far, now, how long have you been on BookTube? This is kind of my bad for not doing my research on this, good. So I apologize. No. I'm still kind of learning as I go too.
Oh, you're good. No, I don't expect that. No, it's 2.5 years. It'll be 3 this summer. So
that's a while.
Yeah.
Share with us a memorable moment of creation when you went from going, and I don't think really anybody is 100% confident, 100%, confident in what they put out. Even the biggest content creators out there probably have some little voice in their head saying, I could have done it better, or, whatever. But tell me about a time that you put together a video that you walked away from it going, you know what, I'm proud of that one. And maybe the first time that happened, if you could share with us what that felt like, and if you remember which one it was even.
Yeah, good question, man. What's funny is I really remember the first that went just tiny bit viral, not viral for me.
Sure.
And I was like, it was the dumbest video. It was just a short. And I remember being like, I almost didn't do it. And yes, exactly. Yeah, that's exactly me.
Meanwhile, his videos look amazing.
I know, right? I'm like, I don't believe you, but that was me.
Yeah.
But I just remember it was just this stupid, and I kind of tried to recreate it recently, but I was just like, what if instead of the Gideon Bible at the hotel, it was a Brandon Sanderson book? That's the stupidest. It was just a stupid concept, and I ran and just did it. It's like a 10-second video on a short, and I remember watching it that day that it got posted, and I would just refresh and it'd be up 1,000 views.
Oh my gosh!
And I'd refresh again and it'd be up another 1,000. It was just like, what is going on? I mean, it leveled off at just under 8,000, but it was just I remember that moment of this is so cool. This is crazy. How does this happen?
It gives you a little bit of faith, right? I asked Mike about this a couple of weeks ago, and by the way, the bell is tolling for Mike next week, one week from tonight. And we'll talk more about that at the end. And by the way, stick around till the end because we have a special surprise for you at the very end. But what was I talking about? Oh, Mike. So I was asking him a little bit of advice, and he just said, you just have to understand that booktubing in general and working on YouTube is very much a series of peaks and valleys, and that you could be doing things that you think are fantastic that just get no traction whatsoever. And you could make what you could, feasibly in your mind call a throwaway video just to put something out there. And all of a sudden, the search and discover software thinks everybody in the world should see it. You're sitting on 10,000 views. So it is a little bit difficult to predict. Here's a really good question. I want to ask this too, because all the way from Croatia, he wants to know, Bryce, what do you like most about fantasy books?
I think, I mean, like, what's funny is, so my wife reads, like, she doesn't do fantasy. Like, it doesn't compute to her. Like, it just doesn't even like make sense. She does like historical fiction is as close as she can get. She loves that stuff, but it has to be somewhat based in reality. And I'm like, get me away from reality. I need as far away as possible. Like, I love that. I love being just immersed in a whole different place. And I think that's what always has like taken me back to the Lord of the Rings, where I just felt I was a part of this fellowship. I was one of the members, even though I wasn't named. And I just feel like that's what it makes you feel like in reading it, at least for me. And that you're along for this journey. And of course there's, I love, like, again, challenging your ideals, and it makes you have to think about what is honor, right? What is the right thing? What is, would you stand up for someone in need? And makes you actually think that through. If you were given this thing that has to, you're the only one that can save humanity, like, are you stepping up, or are you going, I wish I weren't born this time, and I wish it was something else. I wish someone else could have had this. Sometimes you just are given. I just love those kinds of themes that really makes you think. I love just characters. I'm a big character reader too. So, but again, these characters having to react to something, and sometimes, you just like a dragon, like burning some stuff down. I don't know.
Right. And but it's interesting because we talk about the genre as a whole. And I was talking to a friend of mine today, and she reads quite a bit, but she's relatively new to fantasy and was amazed about how many different subgenres there are now.
Yeah.
And said, Brian, you really ought to do a video on all these different subgenres. I said, you know what? It's been done before by people that are a little bit more analytical than I am by nature, that I think probably can lay it out a little bit better, but I might throw a crack at it anyways, just to give my personal interpretation.
I think that's how we get to an idea of, like, we have multiple different takes on it, and that's how we get to kind of the best version of an idea, whatever that might be. So I think that's why I was like, look, I could do the same news as anyone, as Daniel Green. I could do the exact same news that he covers, but my perspective on it is different than his. And I think that's valuable. There's value to that, which is why I don't, feel like I'm copying him too much. I also blogged. We would do some fantasy news like on it as a blog, right? Like,
sure.
Written.
Well, you did it first, so there you go.
I mean, technically, but not
your
really.
Foot landed on the moon first, so we're just gonna say that you are the very first person ever on BookTube to provide fantasy news, and anybody else with 500,000 subscribers is clearly modeling their success
after what trademark it right now.
After what you laid the foundation for. I understand. You're talking about Lord of the Rings. There's a guy in the chat right now. I've been trying to get him to read J.R. Tolkien forever. His name's Dr. Philip Chase. For some reason, he seems so opposed to the Lord of the Rings and to reading Tolkien. I don't understand it. What a good guy he is. I'm excited to have him on the show in a couple of weeks. Let's talk a little bit about collabs like we're doing right now. And one of the things that I noticed very much in the bar business is that bar owners are horrible collaborators. They are jealous types generally. They are happy for you so long as their line outside the door is longer than your line outside the door. And I noticed when I came on to BookTube that everybody's kind of, the rising tide lifts all ships, and collaboration over competition. How have you found collaborating, and have there been some collaborations in your almost 3 years now of doing BookTube that stand out for you as kind of like game changers that you walked away from it going, you know what, that was a lot of fun?
Oh man, so many. That's 100%. Rising tide lifts all ships. That's what it is here. I love that about this community. It's so many, and that's, like you said, fantasy readers, it just seem nicer. I don't know. There's something about it. Like, but it absolutely is. And that's the thing, is we all, like, you see a lot of the same people in the chat. Like, I mean, look at the chat here, is like 90% booktubers that are just, supporting other booktubers. And it's awesome.
Amazing. You know, they are very nice, and they're very kind to be here in the first place. So
Oh
yeah,
yeah. Yeah, 100%. So I was on actually Philip Chase's channel, and that was awesome. That was really fun because we got to get deep into some stuff. I got to talk Janie Wirtz a little bit too, so that was fun. And tell
very cool.
my stories about her. And let's see, I'm trying to think through. It's been a bunch. I just finished up The Witcher with J.R. Carroll's channel. I've been slacking on making it to those, but we did like our final one this last weekend. That was really fun. Really fun. Just Fantasy Files also this last weekend. I try to. It's just part of this is just the fun is just hanging out with someone who loves the stuff that you love, and we have a chance to just do it while talking with other people who love the stuff we love in the chat. You know, it's just great.
You know, it's interesting because I love it too. And I had said, I even mentioned this last week at our debut show, that about a month or month and a half ago, I said, I am not going to do any live streams for at least 6 months because I want to, you know, build the channel up a little bit. I want to grow the community. I want to kind of get my arms around what we're doing. And I was on some other channels. I was on Philip's channel talking about the Wave of Dan trilogy, or the Dan trilogy. And Tori had me on, and Matt from Beard of Darkness had me on. And I started to think about it a little bit. And I said, you know, I have a lot of fun sitting and chatting with people that absolutely know what the day in and the day out of being on BookTube is. In that, if you want to make a 13-minute video, unless you're Mike and can do it all at one shot,
I know.
you're probably putting 4 to 6 hours in it. I watched Patrick, who I'm just flabbergasted by, talk about how, you know, he'll shoot a video and then he's editing for 8 hours. And meanwhile, he's doing it not in his own native language, which is
Right.
insane. It's insane to me. But yeah, I mean, the collaboration part of it has been why I've changed a little bit of the direction of my channel, where I used to do 2 videos a week. And that was really what I wanted to do, to switching it up a little bit to doing more, 1 video a week that I feel to be higher quality than 2 okay videos, and 1 live stream a week where I can get a chance to have fun myself and also try to ask some questions that maybe some booktubers haven't been asked yet before, and provide value to either the other booktubers that are out there watching that want to get to know their friends a little bit better, or to just anybody else who happens to tune into BookTube that wants to know a little bit more about the personalities behind the shows that they are lined up to watch.
Yeah,
so
a little
really
less edited and just kind of themselves. Absolutely.
Absolutely. You know, and you know, how much of it is themselves. And what I've found, at least in my very short, I mean, my channel's not even 4 months old yet, which is
crazy.
insane.
I love seeing it. I know. I just love it.
It's insane. I got that little email yesterday saying, congratulations, blah, 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 blah. So,
hey, there you go.
Hooray. Now, I told Tori, and she said, congratulations. Now you can maybe buy a book at the end of the year. I said, yeah, it's probably that's probably about right, but that's okay. It's not what I'm here for. Here's a great question that Darko has that I want to ask. Bryce, as a family law attorney, if you had to represent any one of the families in A Song of Ice and Fire in a dispute, which family would it be?
Ooh, that's a hard one. And I realized I just remembered an answer to actually your last question. If I can get
absolutely
back in time a little.
Yeah, I'll take this off.
I was on AP Canavan's channel talking Malazan, or Malazan, however you want to pronounce it. And Steven Erickson was in the chat and confirmed one of my theories. And I was like, I'm the coolest guy in the world.
That's when you retire. That's when you literally grab your lavalier mic, you throw it on the ground, say, I'm done with this shit. I'm done with BookTube. I've hit the summit. I'm out Mount Everest.
I was just like, that's so cool. Like, that is like, anyway, coolest thing. Anyway, sorry, I mean to derail.
Well, Darko needs to know, this is very important now. If you are summoned to Westeros, and there are disputes going on.
Now, I visited Kindles and Kicks, you got to go subscribe. Great channel. Love it.
I'm a big fan of Kindles and Kicks as well.
I would probably, I mean, just as a lawyer, you'd probably just go with the Starks, because I mean, in a fair, just legal system, most of the time, I don't know how many people are like, they hear, look at what they're saying, or on their phone, you know, look at what they're saying to me on these texts. And I'm like, look at what you're saying. I'm not putting that in evidence.
Right.
So
So the Starks would be where you now you
we,
understand if you have to go to Winterfell,
right.
for some in-person client meetings, that may not be as nice as
Eh,
going, to some
yeah,
of the more,
I'm,
temper
in
climates.
potentially winning a case, that's where I'm headed, because everyone else is going to have, well, again, it's all about, what's the evidence you have, right? I just feel like exactly, I know, fair and just. That's why I had to give that qualifier there. If it's an actual A Song of Ice and Fire tribunal or whatever, then we're talking, yeah.
I mean, I think, there's merit to your desire for the Starks. I think there's problems with that because if you win, you're probably going to get killed by the
Right,
Lannisters.
right.
On the other hand, if you're representing the Lannisters and you lose, you're probably going to get killed also by the Lannisters.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that one's a dangerous one.
And Ryan
But
would like to enter some dragons into evidence. Will the court approve that? Has
I
it
think
been?
that's the best evidence because you go, how do you argue with it?
Well, right. I mean, does it matter if the dragon can talk or not?
I, yeah, right.
And would you advise your dragon clients that do speak to pretend that they don't
Oh,
possibly
100%. You want it,
understand?
the less you say in court, the less ammo anyone has against you. So you definitely want to keep it low
So,
profile.
so in your pre-trial prep with your dragon, with your speaking dragon, just so I'm clear, so our audience here is clear, don't talk. I'm knocking my microphone over. Don't talk. Don't burn down the judge with flaming breath fire.
Yeah,
Don't do
that could
that.
be bad. Yeah.
Okay, very cool. There's Derry. Hi, Derry. Interesting, interesting. Let's talk about Malazan for a second because you're a big fan, correct?
Huge fan. It beat out Lord of the Rings for my number one spot. That's how
Right.
much of a fan.
And folks, I will tell you that if you have not watched Bryce's top 100 fantasy books, are they in 10 different videos or 5 different
10
videos?
different videos, yep, and I got
10,
it on, like, kind of on the main just page that you land on. It's one of the, I don't know, what do you call it, sub things?
you should go to the Shelf Center. If it's not
Playlist, kind
already,
of.
if it's not already in the description, I'll have it for those of you that are watching on replay. By the time you see this, this will be in the description, and you'll be able to find Bryce's channel real simply. But Malazan, I'm telling you, man, I just read Gardens of the Moon for the first time this month because the community would put a poll up saying which, series should I read next, and Malazan came up
I mean,
first.
your
So,
community must be amazing. That's all I gotta say.
wow, there's good people in it for sure. I don't know sometimes if they're recommending me books because they love the books or if they're torturing me because not that I didn't love the book. It's a 5-star book. Gardens of the Moon for me worked in all kinds of ways. I'm going to talk about it when I do my wrap up on Friday. But wow, they put it on the same month as Shogun, which is like, okay, come
Mm,
on, you guys. And I was trying to do Demon and White at the same time.
oof,
And
that's heavy.
yeah, but let's talk about Malazan for a second. So, specifically, what about it puts it higher than Lord of the Rings for you?
Oh, man, we do not have time for this.
I'll give you 2 minutes to
I'm
answer.
just kidding. I mean, frankly, I mean, one of the biggest things, I mean, just it has that, like, me getting sucked into a world, like that's what I was chasing, that drug. And so me getting just sucked into this world, I didn't think it could be beat with, from Lord of the Rings. And I do kind of feel like I will go a number of books and be like, oh, I really miss Malazan. So, and so there's that. I love that he trusts you as a reader. He doesn't treat you like you don't know anything. I feel like there's this kind of, I don't know if you saw that Bookborn video that she did of like authors kind of like almost like giving too much. And you're like,
Sure.
I love this, like, I trust you, reader, like, and also have a little trust in me as the author. We're going to get there. Right. And that's what I learned after reading a number is like, look, don't get too bogged down in trying to figure out every little thing along the way. You're just going to make yourself frustrated. in the end, it's gonna be a epic showdown, whatever, and you're gonna feel it. And there you go. So it won. So the author did his job, you did enough of your job, and then on reread, and that's part of the thing too, is any media that I can reread over and over again, I already give extra stars for that, right? Extra
Sure.
points in my book. And Malazan is there's few out there, like few books that you can reread as many times as Malazan, and still, because I'm on my third time in some of the books, and I'm still like, oh, like still finding things. And absolutely, like that's what it gets for me. Those are kind of like the big ones. But I love the, we've been talking about the philosophical elements, and they get more philosophical away from Gardens of the Moon. They're a little philosophical there, but definitely more. And so I love this like heavy thought. Like you can be a Philip Chase and really like intellectual with these, and an AP Canavan, right, and be super intellectual with these books. But at the same time, if you just like a dinosaur with swords for arms, that also exists.
That's awesome.
And that's freaking cool. So
when I read the book, I realized pretty quickly that there is no hand holding. And
I love Robin Hobb, by the way. Sorry.
Yes. Love Robin Hobb. She is currently sitting on atop my all-time best fantasy series. But yeah, what is this? I gotta look, because this is the man, right?
Yeah.
I love Malazan on the first read. On my second read is the greatest literary journey of my life, and there are dinosaurs with sword arms. Well, folks, he's a doctor, and he may not be a medical doctor, but when it comes to dinosaurs with swords for arms, he knows more than most medical doctors.
I know, right?
So that's pretty awesome. What did I want to say today? We're going to wrap up pretty quick because Bryce is on a time frame today. And of course, this will be on replay. Tell people where to find you. You're on Shelf Centered on BookTube, correct?
Yeah.
And do you still do the blog as well?
No.
Not as much. So, okay. So we will have that. We will have that in the description. I want to let everybody know, and then we got a little surprise for you here. So don't go anywhere too quick. I want to let everybody know 1 week from tonight, we got a guy, according to my notes, has 112 subscribers on his YouTube. Excuse me. 112,000 subscribers on his YouTube channel. He's this guy named Mike. I don't know if you've seen him before or heard about him. I'm interested to talk to him. I want to find out what makes this guy tick. I got to tell you, Mike and I have so many common interests, from books to rock and roll music to professional wrestling to professional sports.
To Arnold Schwarzenegger movies.
It's going to run the gamut, you guys, next week. You do not want to miss it. It's going to be at 8 p.m. Eastern time, 7 p.m. Central time, and then whatever the mountains that Bryce lives in an hour later. And of course, Pacific time, it'll be at 5 p.m. I want to give Bryce the final shout out here. If you guys are regular viewers of the channel, I always end every episode here on BeltTube with one for the road. And for whom the bell tolls, we always want to give our guests the opportunity to leave you guys with one for the road. So Bryce, take it away.
Oh man. Well, I did some thinking, and I already mentioned one of my quotes that actually kind of replaced this one, but I figured this is the one that I'm going to go with because I've always loved this. But instead of the Joe Abercrombie quote of better to do a thing than to live with the fear of it, there's a great Robert Louis Stevenson quote that I have always liked. It says, "You cannot run away from weakness. You must sometimes fight it out or perish. And if that be so, why not now and where you stand?" I've always been a fan of that, and that's kind of how I've lived a little bit. And but I get scared of things, and we all do. But I just think that's always a good one. You know what? Let's see where things go, and you'd be amazed at what you can do personally. Like that's what I try to keep telling my kids is there's so much greatness and there's so much that we each can present and give to the world. You have it in you and you're needed, you're loved. And I'll stick with that.
That is, I can't think of a better way to end this episode. That is a tremendous one for the road. I want to thank everybody who's been here in chat. I want to super thank Bryce for sharing some of his time with us tonight. Again, I take it all back if I get an invoice for this interview by the hour.
Just an hour, you know.
I will. I take it all back. He's terrible. No, he's actually one of the greatest guys here. He's exceptionally well read. One of the things that I kind of trailed off on, and I want to go back to, is if you go back to his top 100 fantasy books, you're going to find books you've not heard of, but they're going to be incredible. And I really do think he knows what is good. I align with his taste quite a bit, except for one book. And I'm going to have him back on the channel when I discuss my least favorite book of all time, which happens to be in his top 10. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. But thank you so much, Bryce, for being here. It's been an absolute pleasure. You guys all have a great night. And again, I want to remind you, Tori's got Fonda Leon in about an hour. So if you're watching live, flip on over to her channel and I'll see you in the chat. And for everybody else, I'll see you next Wednesday when the bell tolls for Mike. Talk to you guys later. Yeah, exactly. Air guitar.